Welcome to Delingpole, a Breitbart.com podcast. Here is the podcast host, James Delingpole.
Welcome, friend, to the Delingpole podcast with me, your friend, your very special friend, James Delingpole. And this week's guest is almost certainly one of the most exciting guests we've ever had. And she's pouting and making face movements in excitement. She's happy to be on the show. And when I tell particularly the male listeners, but also the female listeners, male friend, female friend, it is none other than Ms. Julia Hartley-Brewer.
I love that you got the Ms right.
Yeah, Julia.
My bank can't.
Can I say what it's like having you on the show?
Can I say what it's like having you sitting on my sofa in my sitting room? Because I have tweeted out to point out that if I don't tweet again in the next hour, they're to call 999.
What do you
I mean that lovingly.
What are you saying?
I'm just saying.
What, not safe in flats?
I'm just saying.
I was going to say something.
There aren't many women who'd let James Delingpole into their home. Even Mrs. Delingpole has question marks about it, surely.
I was going to compliment you. I was going to say.
I love that. I was going to compliment you.
No, I am still going to say it. That it is a bit like interviewing you, spending an hour with you, is a bit like having Scarlett Johansson in your bedroom. And you really can't work out which of the many things you'd like to do to her you're going to do in the hour available.
Seriously, people, call 999 now.
I would also like to point out, for the benefit of my male friend, hello male friend, what Julia is wearing. Describe what you're wearing.
This is like Philip May on the One Show, and everyone's just showing everyday sexism, asking about what he's wearing.
Yeah, you are a sex symbol.
Oh God!
And tell them what you're wearing.
I'm not even a sex symbol in my own home.
Tell them about the black kind of.
You know me. I'm the
wearing.
Black Widow. I've got a black jumper and black jeans and black boots on.
You could almost be like the woman from the Avengers, couldn't you? Like Diane. You are.
I was about 18 stone lighter.
You are Diana Rigg.
I'll go with that.
Yeah, exactly.
Go with that. No, I'm thinking you can come again.
Oh, stop! How can somebody? I
like to point out that's not my phone. It's actually someone worried about James Delingpole having a heart attack, I think.
One of the things I hate about mobile phones
is people who leave them on during interviews.
No, the way they intrude. Yeah, I suppose I should have turned it off. The way they intrude on one's time. I used to like the days when your phone was in your house and outside the house was you can't get me time.
And you know what we used to do then? We used to make an arrangement, and this is mad. The young folk listening will never understand this. We used to just simply turn up when we said we'd turn up, where we said we'd turn up. I know it's mind-blowing to anyone under the age of 25, but we did actually manage to do that.
And another thing, you and I both remember the days at university.
Pigeon post.
Pigeon post. Oh, it was so exciting, wasn't it?
There were no mobile phone calls. There were just little notes that you put in your pigeon in the post box, and they were passed to someone else's pigeonhole in another college.
Yeah.
Oh, happy days.
And sometimes you would just drop by people's rooms just to see if they were in.
Mind-blowing.
You can't do that anymore. You have to make arrangements on the phone. And
you can't do that anymore, but that's because of the court orders.
Oh, I can't keep up with you little minx, you. Now, the reason I was saying that it is like having Scarlett Johansson was not actually a sexual reference, really. It was more the fact that you've got so much interesting to say about so many things, and you're so right about so many issues.
Imagine being my husband, the poor man. There is nothing I don't have an opinion on, I think.
Is it? Tell me about that. What are his politics like?
Well, do you know, my husband didn't vote when we first met, and I pointed out that wasn't going to fly with me, and voting is something that I think should be compulsory, so that wouldn't work. They vary. We wouldn't necessarily vote the same in a general election, but then I think both of us are floating voters, though. A lot of people don't seem to think that. You think I'm a right-wing lunatic like you, but actually I've been on a political journey, and my vote is always, every election, my vote is up for grabs.
So you're moving from the left slowly rightward. So
I was raised in a Labour Party family. My father stood to be a Labour MP. He was Roy Hattersley's agent in the 70s.
You're actually quite common, aren't you, Julie?
You can see, because this is the key thing, because you came to my home. I came running back from the Talk Radio studio, and I remembered leaving the place in a bit of a pit, and I thought I'd better do a quick tidy. And then halfway through, I realised, oh no, James Delingpole's posh. And as you pointed out when you arrived, you're also a boy, and therefore you wouldn't notice, because posh people's homes are absolutely filthy.
Yeah. It's actually.
I'm lower middle class.
Do you know, it's a misconception that I'm posh. I went to the village school and I had a Birmingham accent then. I think I only really poshed up my accent just before I went up to Oxford.
So we're both common as much.
We're both common as much. Yeah. There's definitely common in my family. And actually, do you know what? As I've got at university, I had a slight hang-up about being not... It was a sort of Brideshead thing. It was just after Brideshead Revisited had been on the TV, and one felt great pressure to be either posh or to be one of those help the miners in
angry lefty. Yeah,
angry lefty. There wasn't much in between. But as I've got older, I've really become rather proud of my Midlands manufacturing roots, because I think that people from the Midlands are much more real than the London tossers who voted against Brexit.
You know, I hate all that. See, I was born in Birmingham, and my husband's from... Yes, I was born Queen Elizabeth Hospital, yes. No, my parents were London, working class Londoners who went to Birmingham University and met as students. No, but the thing is, I hate all this whole, everyone's real outside London nonsense. I'm metropolitan elite, proud to be so, don't care about it. I'm really proud of how hard my parents worked to get where they are. I'm proud of how I've worked to get where I am. And yet I voted Brexit. I hate this whole dissing of London and dissing of the middle class thing. There's nothing to be ashamed of.
But that's because
they're not more real. They just all know each other outside London because no one moves. I
used to get all defensive about London when I used to live in London. I'm afraid if you live out in the country, you do actually start hating Londoners and their Ponzi ways, because they do the way that. And what people say about the BBC is true, despite its kind of ghastly regionalisation, which was actually almost worse than
it's even more patronising.
Even more patronising. At the same time, there is that sense that the way London people think is the only way to think, and it just ain't.
Yes, yeah, but that depends if you only spend time with Londoners. But that's a media bubble. I don't think that's how most people live their lives. They've got family outside London, friends outside London.
Now listen, I wanted to talk to you about special things that I think I couldn't talk about with most of my male special guests.
It happens to a lot of people, James. A lot of men find that they do recover.
What are you talking about? You keep taking this to places that I don't want to go, that make me very unhappy.
Right. I
feel like you're trying to castrate me.
Well, actually, you not talk to men about? We were having a good.
We were talking about this before we were wasting words on dead air, and which I hate doing. But you made the Trevor Phillips point.
Yeah, the reality is there are things that I say, and I say them on whether it's about Ched Evans on Question Time when he was a guilty man, not an innocent man, yes. Of a footballer who was exonerated of a hideous rape crime, and about other things. But and I've had politicians say to me, "Well, I agree with you, but I can't say that. You can because you're a woman." In the same way that Trevor Phillips makes comments about black men, which doesn't matter whether they're true or not. He can say them because he's a black man, and we are getting to the point in our media world, and indeed, as you say, the metropolitan bubble, where basically the only person who's allowed to pass commentary, is allowed to give a judgment on anything at all, is someone who's from a particular class. So a woman can only comment on a woman, a man on a man, white person on a white person, black person on a black person, gay person, transgender, and it's got absurd, as if everyone else's viewpoint or judgment or thought on this is totally invalid.
That is the ultimate goal of identity politics, isn't it? Is to split everyone up into these special groups where you're governed by your...
And it's about dividing people. And this is the interesting thing, because, again, you get back into the situation where, for me, the equality for women, equality for gay people, equality for ethnic minorities and white people, that was all about people being treated equally. People not being unfairly treated or more fairly treated because of who they were. And now we're in a situation where we are everybody has to be in a category.
I had an argument just before this.
Shocker.
I was on it was a
James Delingpole in argument. Shock,
do you
everybody.
Know, Amal Rajan,
yes.
Okay. So I was doing the
former editor of the Independent, now the Guardian's media editor.
I was doing the the Jeremy Vine show. We were talking about whatever, and Amal Rajan was saying, I was the first black person, and I said, blah blah blah. I said, Amal, you are so not black. I said, Indian or whatever you are doesn't count as black. So we carried on the conversation as we were going down, and we were talking to the people behind the desk, the security people, a black woman and a black man. And Amal said to them, Am I one of the brothers or something, or am I black? And he said, yes, you're definitely black. And they bumped fists. And I said, well, if Amal's black, then I'm black. And the two people behind the desk agreed that I was black too. So it solved the issue.
The BBC world. But again, it's this need to constantly give. This is my special thing. Yeah, this is the thing I'm different for, or I'm like you for. I don't feel the need to be the same or different from anybody. I judge people by this is going to blow your mind. I judge people by what they do and what they say.
Yeah.
I know it'll never catch on, but it's worked for me so far.
It's interesting you say that. I've been longing to write a book, which I don't think would sell, which is the reason why
It's the main reason for not writing books.
Yeah, it is. But it's a book that ought to be written, which is about how the progressive, the liberal left, or whatever you want to call them, have made this new rule where stuff you say is as bad as stuff that you do. And it's extraordinary.
So saying the wrong phrase, for instance, about a rape victim, is you may as well have raped the woman yourself. It's the same difference.
You have, in fact, raped them.
Yes.
In fact, worse than rape. And it makes it very, very difficult. Of course, the purpose of this is to make people like us shut up, tread on eggshells.
But again, you say people like us, but my point is that everyone is being put in again, in this particular category, into are you for us or are you against us? So if you don't agree with every single word on, say, how one particular campaign about how transgender people should be talked about, or on feminism, then suddenly you are against us. So, for instance, if I don't toe the line on what I call, and I get told off constantly about the feminazi line on feminism, then I'm not a feminist. I'm anti-feminist. And again, so I was the third ever political editor of this country who was a woman. I sat in Downing Street briefings where I was the only woman for years on end. I'm the daughter of an NHS GP, a mum who put herself through university divorced with two kids.
Now you're playing the game.
No, but exactly what I'm saying. But the idea and what I've stood up for and how I've promoted other women along the way, the idea that I'm not a feminist is nonsense, except they're allowed to say it because I don't agree with them.
Yeah.
And again, so it has to be, there are people who are for us, people who are against us. You and I, we're in the same camp automatically. We may not agree on lots of things, but on those things we are categorised together.
Yeah, but you see, I think there is a divide. There is a them and us divide between those of us who believe in freedom of speech and those of us who don't.
That's what it comes down to.
And actually, that's quite an important divide. So I think one can refer disparagingly to those who don't believe in freedom of speech. This nonsense.
It's not exclusively on the left, though. But it is interesting.
Name me the people on the
Karen,
right.
you were going to do that. Who was saying that?
You're
right. Long pause.
You're playing the Nick Cohen game now, which I used to be a massive fan of Nick Cohen, and I think on certain issues he's absolutely gold. But there's a game he plays where whenever he says anything disparaging about the left, he has to say, and by the way, the right is just as awful. Yeah. And actually, show me the examples. Show me.
Yeah.
Show your working.
No, you're right. At the current time, let's go with at least at the current time, this is an issue on the left. And the bizarre thing is on what we thought was as the liberal left, and I always thought part of liberalism was freedom of speech and was protecting people's rights. I'm always amazed, actually, when perfectly otherwise sane people on Twitter, and you and I both love Twitter, they will say something or write something, and then someone will call them up on it, but with an opinion, and saying they find that offensive and they didn't like it. And the person, often quite a well-known writer, will apologise. And I always say, don't apologise. Say, I'm sorry you don't like it. But if someone says to me they don't like something I've said, I always reply, why do you think that matters? Why do you think that I care what you think? I didn't write it for you. Whether you hate me for it, it doesn't change my opinion. It's the idea that one should only give an opinion if everyone else agrees with it, which is bizarre because it's unlikely, other than, I don't know, I'm trying to think, I don't think there's anything. There's not babies are cute. I think there are people who disagree with that. Night is darker than daytime. Let's go with that. Well, maybe not in Iceland. I mean, there is nothing that everyone's going to agree with. But the idea that you shouldn't give an opinion because someone might, quote, find it offensive is a really new concept.
But this is another of the leftist, the progressive tropes, which is the denial of there are such things as absolute truths.
Yeah, terrifying.
And this is what's infected academe, and it's actually logically provably wrong. There is such a thing as truth.
Yeah.
And if you say there's no such thing as truth, you are stating a truth. Yeah. If there is no such thing as truth.
And also for me, moral relativism as well. This idea that it is unacceptable. It is considered to be, I mean, let's face it, clearly racist and Islamophobic and goodness knows what else to state. I believe that Western liberal democratic values are superior to all other values in the world. I believe that we in the Western world, and by America, sort of. There's big issues with America, but Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Western Europe, Britain. I believe that we have, as civilization goes, we are at the peak of civilization in terms of freedom, equality, fairness, rule of law, your life chances.
Women have got a bit a bit.
Women have got a bit uppity, that is true. But
apart from that.
but the idea that all cultures and all moralities and all religions that are all equal. Well, tell that to a woman who's about to be, given 20 lashings and spend 10 years in jail in a Middle Eastern country because she went to the police about being raped. I mean, the idea that this idea that there is no absolute truth and that there is no absolute morality and everything's relative, I think is again not only wrong, I think it's dangerous.
Or look at the wonderful, wonderful, colourful tradition of FGM, of something like, I think it's,
their culture,
over
James. It's
80% of Somali women have been genitally mutilated. Now, I just can't see anything charming or about that particular thing. It's like, well, it's a bit like chucking gay men off buildings. It's interesting, but it doesn't belong in our age, I don't think.
You went all sort of, I'm not sure I can say this. It's called abuse. It's called child abuse, isn't it?
No. That's
what it is.
I wasn't actually doubting that it was absolutely bloody appalling.
No, as a general rule, I think cutting off bits of women's genitalia, I've got quite a big issue, not the same extent of the issue, but about cutting off bits of male genitalia, actually. I think it's clearly medically unneeded for the vast majority of children, certainly for the female genitalia mutilation. They're quite clearly it's a crime, and it's an absolute joke.
I think
that it's not been prosecuted yet in this country successfully.
I've often wondered. I imagine it would have to alter your wanking technique if you haven't got a sort of foreskin to play with. But I don't know. Never having had my.
So pleased we've had that thought.
Well, you did bring it up.
I just don't think we should be cutting off bits of newborn babies.
Right.
I don't think that should be a big questionable thing to say in this day and age.
Yes. The question I was going to ask you is, going back to the sisterhood, why
I
are they
think
not
I'm allowed to be in the sisterhood. I think I was thrown out.
No, I think you may have been thrown out. Well, but Margaret Thatcher was not denied being a feminist because she wasn't. She repudiated the notion. Why are these women who insist there's a rape culture in this country? Why are they so quiet about the actual rapes that are being committed by rape gangs in places like Rotherham and all over by gangs of mostly Muslim taxi drivers, it seems to me. Why are they quiet about that, and why are they quiet about FGM, yet rather too vocal about every other aspect about how awful men are?
I mean, I'm not sure that one should pick and choose about the rape and abuse of young girls. I'm opposed to all of it. I think most normal people are. Whichever. And again, look, the vast majority of girls and boys who were raped or abused in this country, it's done by white non-Muslims. The reason why 90% of the country is white and non-Muslim. But that's the thing. There are different modus operandi among different cultures and different communities. But at the end of the day, you've still got children who are being raped either in their own homes or other people's homes or care homes or wherever. End of the day, the issue I have is horrible phrase, political correctness. We come back to this thing where once you've identified a group, we categorise people as a victim group, women, and then you have another victim group, Muslims. Yeah. And then when sometimes there's an occasion where women are victims of one of the other groups, like Muslims, then everyone gets in a complete tears going, oh gosh, now what do we do? Which victim group do we choose?
There is a hierarchy. I want to draw that chart at some stage. And I think clearly Muslims would come fairly near the top. Gay used to be, you remember the good old days when you used to be able to say, some of my best friends were gay, which was an indicator that you are kind of actually pretty liberal and stuff. Now, being gay doesn't really count.
Now it just
for
turns
much.
into Tim Farron.
It doesn't. You look at, for example, Milo.
We never did have cocktails, the three of us, did we? We never got round to
Milo
that.
is so fickle. I mean, he's a bitch. I love him, but he's just like, he loves blowing people out. Not he loves doing other things as well, but yeah, he's very prone to not turning up to dinner when you've arranged it and stuff. Which is
tedious.
Charming scatty? No, it's rude, isn't it, really?
I think once you're married with kids, you just have no truck for this. You haven't got time for it anymore. Young people today, yes.
I wonder when Milo's going to settle down with a nice young lady.
Nice young girl. Can't wait to go to that parish wedding.
Yeah, exactly. You are listening to The Delingpole Show with me, your special friend, James Delingpole. And
I don't like the way you say special friend.
And no, it's
really creepy.
No, it works. people, my friend who listens to the show likes it. They are listening intimately to me. We have a special bond. And now they're here with you, Julia.
I'm another special friend.
You're my special guest.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So anyway, you're listening to us. More coming in a moment.
Check out the official Breitbart store today. Store.breitbart.com is the home for the brand new official Breitbart store. Head there now for products for women and men, like t-shirts, baseball tees, tank tops, hoodies, and hats, or an unapologetically American belt buckle. Store.breitbart.com has these items and many more, so get your gear now at store.breitbart.com. This is Delingpole, a Breitbart.com podcast. Here once again is James Delingpole.
Welcome back to Delingpole with me, your friend, James Delingpole.
I almost choked on my
Julia
tea
is
then.
about to check. At least it was on the tea. Nothing more sinister. My special guest, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Julia and I were just congratulating ourselves on how entertaining we're being so far. And if you don't agree, you don't deserve us. Isn't that right, Julia?
Absolutely.
Julia, I wanted to ask you about something that just really winds me up. And do you know what? I tried this out the other day on another of my special guests, Gary Bloody Bell. And I say Gary Bloody Bell because he was a real pain. I said, Gary, don't you think that the bloody idiot woman in charge of the CPS is an absolute effing nightmare, and she's politicised the whole organisation? And of course, Gary, being a QC, was my work. I can't. Gary, the most politically incorrect person in Britain, would not commit on tape. I think you might.
I will.
You will.
I'd sack her tomorrow.
Alison Pearson.
I correct myself. I wouldn't sack her tomorrow. I'd sack her today. Not Alison Pearson. Alison Saunders.
Sorry, Alison Saunders. Yes.
I wouldn't sack Alison Pearson.
No, we love Alison Pearson.
We would just say for the podcast, we love you, Alison.
That was a Freudian. Yeah,
Okay.
Alison, we love
right.
you.
Director
Pearson.
of Public Prosecutions, Alison Saunders. I've written about her a number of times, and actually I've just done an interview, a pre-recorded interview at Talk Radio just before we started this podcast, in which she comes up, although not by name. I think what she's perpetrating a terrible crime against both men and women in this country with her politically correct nonsense that she is perpetrating here, particularly regarding issues of rape. We are currently in a situation in terms of CPS guidance in terms of rape cases, which is that, I mean, I find this utterly bizarre, because when women are supposed to be equal with men, last time I looked, that a man who goes out and gets drunk in a bar or a club and then meets up with a woman who hasn't spiked her drink, he hasn't targeted her, but he's just hooked up with a woman who's also drunk.
She spiked herself.
Yeah, spiked herself, just as drunk as he is, and it doesn't have to be, and we're not talking blind drunk, but just drunk, and they fancy each other, a bit of a dance and a bit of a grope and a snog on the dance floor, decide to go home, go back to her place or his place, and they have a grope and then end up having sex, and then thanks very much, here's your number, here's my number, I'll speak to you, I'll give you a call tomorrow. Everything's fine. They go home, go their separate ways. The next morning she can wake up, or indeed 2 weeks later, and say, oh, I regret that. I wish I hadn't had sex with that man. Oh, I mean, I was drunk, but I remember what happened, but I wish I hadn't done that. She can then claim rape. And instead of the police saying, but you said yes at the time. Yes, I did. And you remember saying yes at the time. Yes. And he didn't force you. No. And you didn't say no to him. No, I didn't. That man can still be charged with rape. Why? Because a woman who has a drink now is believed now to have no responsibility for anything she does. The man, who has also had a drink, is responsible not only for his own actions, he's also responsible for the woman's actions. We have infantilized women in a shocking way, making men responsible for our choices and our behaviour, and at the same time basically made men rapists unless proven otherwise. And there is not a single man listening to this right now who probably on this basis couldn't be accused of rape. And on this basis, I am a victim of rape. And I can certainly remember circumstances in my teenage years where this would have been the circumstance. I thought, and woke up in the morning and thought, wish I hadn't
you could write a
done
book
that.
about this.
Wish I hadn't done that.
You could be the victim du jour.
Exactly.
You could say, I was raped so many times because technically you were.
Yeah.
If I didn't know,
I didn't regret that many of them, James.
if I didn't know that what you had said was actually current
You'd think I was making
policy,
it up, wouldn't you?
It sounds so absurd.
That is official CPS policy guidance issued
It can't
by
be
the
the same
Director
in
of
the-
Public
It
Prosecutions.
can't be the same in the US, can it?
I don't think it is. I don't think it's the same anywhere else.
No.
Look, I'm all for more women coming forward. if they've been raped or sexually abused. I'm all
Actual
more men. I'm all for people. If you've been the victim of crime, you should come forward. And we should give the same sense. We shouldn't dismiss people on the basis of just on a hearsay. People should be taken seriously. However, there needs to be evidence that a crime has taken place. And one of the reasons why we have this terribly low conviction rate for rape is and low number of cases coming to court isn't because everyone thinks women deserve it and she was wearing a mini skirt, so yeah, well, she deserved to be raped. It's simply because in most scenarios, the awful date rape thing we talk about, it's a man saying I didn't and it's a woman saying he did. There's no evidence, there's no force, there's just a load of, both people are drunk, no one really knows what happens, and yet these cases are coming to court.
Yeah. And the worst of it is that we're getting a kind, you and I are sounding like dinosaurs because there is this.
But the majority of people agree with us.
No, they do. But, for example, the other day I went to a minor university called Cambridge to speak at their union, and I got interviewed by a student from the TAB, and I talked about this subject, and I said, look, I think it's really sad that we now live in a culture where you're 19, you're up at university, discovering who you are, discovering your sexuality, experimenting. Probably haven't had much sex before.
Speak for yourself.
And are you saying you're a dirty whore?
I'm saying I was a hot teenager.
I was being sympathetic. Now stop it. You will lower the tone every time. And so I was being sympathetic, and I was saying, why now can men not have a drunken fumble without the risk of being accused? With consent? Yeah, without the risk of being accused of rapist. And instead of going, yeah, this old bloke is talking sense, he sort of writes this piece saying James Delingpole defends rapey behaviour, and I just think something's got to be done about it.
No, but this is the thing. It's this idea that you can't... The nuances of sexual relations between any two people of any gender, of any age, the idea that there isn't this massive big grey area of, is she interested, isn't she interested, is he interested? And
that's why we get drunk.
And exactly. And we hear all these cases, especially these, and this is awful, it's awful, these young men who go up to university and who, again, have a drunken fumble or a drunken sex and then are accused because it turns out actually she was trying to get back her ex, or the boyfriend came back and then she had to admit there was sex. I mean, this comes up. I'm not saying this is a majority of cases, but it's a big enough minority we should be concerned about it. And frankly, one is too many. But these situations where women are being told that yes, it's rape, even though under no normal person's judgment is this rape. He didn't think it was at the time, and she didn't think it was at the time. You know what? Then it's not rape. And unfortunately, you and I can't be on every jury to see sense. But when we're in a situation where a man needs to basically get a witness legal document to prove that this woman is, and maybe have her, I don't know, have her breath tested to check that she is breathalyzed, to test that she's not drunk and she's able to give full written consent with a witness, have it legally notarized, and then he can have sex with her. I'm going to say, I think it throws out some of the fun of the sex that you have at parties in your freshers year at university.
But how did we get to this pass? I mean, I can understand under Tony Blair, he's not, just correct me if I'm wrong, he's not Prime Minister.
Last time I looked.
No, nor is Gordon Brown.
Yes. So
the last two Prime Ministers we've had have been notionally conservative.
But they don't set policy on...
Well, they do.
They don't decide what happens on campuses.
No, the CPS, is that not a political appointment?
This is it. It shouldn't be a political appointment. The law.
No, but we're talking about what is.
Yeah, I suppose.
So here we have
the last DPP before this, of course, is Sir Keir Starmer is now the man who's probably going to be trying to become leader of the Labour Party.
Keir Starmer was a complete hollow man as well. Absolutely ghastly sort of Blairite stooge. Presumably, it wasn't introduced under him. This
I believe it was introduced under Alison Saunders, but we were heading that way under Keir Starmer.
But why can we not get rid of her? Why is she still in place?
I assume because people are either afraid of questioning this, because then you're accused of supporting the rapists,
yes,
and you're accused of being anti-women. We've got this weird notion about this sort of, you have to believe everything a woman says and nothing a man says. I mean, again, all men are rapists unless proved otherwise. I mean, all this stuff about, men need to be given, men going to university need to be given lessons to be told not to rape.
I have a story about this.
My husband didn't need to be given a lesson not to bloody rape anybody.
I have a story about this. The last time I was in Cambridge, I met this very, very fiercely bright young man who had gone to a grammar school, I think. I mean, he was from a poor background, probably even poorer than yours, Julian. And
I love the way you say grammar school.
I didn't mean it like that. I'm a massive fan of grammar
went to a
schools.
comp.
No, I think grammar schools are really good. Actually, he may have gone to a comp. I think.
Gosh.
Anyway, he had come up to Cambridge, and every college had forced the men to attend these induction courses, teaching them not to be rapists.
So insulting.
And he wrote an article for the Salisbury Review, saying how, look, I've got into Cambridge. I worked hard to get here. I'm not stupid. I do not want to be told that I'm a potential rapist. I didn't need this lesson. How did his college authorities respond to this? He was called up before the college dean, or whatever they're called in Cambridge, and grilled with the diversity officer and the something else officer. So a 19-year-old gets put through the mill for writing the kind of piece that actually every bright undergraduate should have written.
And frankly, he should be congratulated for it. We're in thought police territory. We're telling people not just what they can say, but what they can think. And again, if you question it, well, why are you questioning it? It must be because what? So he's putting his hand up saying, I secretly do like to rape, so I don't want to go to a class that might persuade me not to. It's so insulting. A small minority of men are rapists. And I'm sorry, let's be honest, a small minority of women are ever raped. And men are also raped. I am fed up with this notion that we live in a rape culture. Women who are at university now are probably safer than they've ever been. Women in work now. If you talk to women who are in the world of work in the 1960s, who routinely had their bottoms slapped and tits grabbed and God knows what.
Happy days.
Well, you see, maybe. But this is before the sex change, James. But this is the thing. It did happen, and it's got better. I've come across sexism in my job. I've always found the useful thing at being 5'11" is whenever I've been talked down to, I've simply stood up, and I find most men find it difficult to talk down to a 5'11" woman.
Yeah.
But I mean, and I've always stood up for other women in the office, and I don't take any nonsense, and I always make sure I'm on the lookout for other women who feel they are forced to take the nonsense. But the idea that women are sort of walking around at work, on university campuses or in the street or on public transport, permanently terrified that someone is going to grab them and rape them or grab their breasts. This is a nonsense.
Well,
this is not the experience of ordinary women.
In Paris, is actually the case.
I doubt it.
No. Apparently, over 50% of women, of single women, are now don't want to take public transport.
No, but this is again, this is the thing. The fear that some of the anxiety that we hear, and I think there's a lot of nonsense about this, that about young women particularly, and young men. You're telling all young men they're rapists, and you're telling all young women you're about to be a victim. No wonder they're all anxious. No wonder they're concerned. And the first thing you're going to be told about when you arrive on campus now is, oh, don't worry, you're either going to be a rape victim or you're going to be a rapist and spend the rest of your life in jail. This is an absolute nonsense. The world has never been a safer place. Well, Britain has never been a safer place.
But everyone actually, we're in a culture where everyone kind of wants to be a victim because actually it buys you power.
Well, doesn't just buy you power, and I see this. My daughter's only 10 years old, but I can see it among some of the girls in her class already. This need to say, "Oh, well, I know we're about to compete doing this, but here's why I won't do well, but I hurt my foot, and but I this, but the excuses culture and the but I'm special culture. Yeah. Well, we've been telling our children for years, you can be anything, you can do anything, you are special. You know what? I don't think many of us are special. I don't think you're special. I don't think I'm special. We're fair. We're probably, overly, pretty successful, done quite well, bluffed our way through, above average. Well done. Doesn't make us special. Special is, Stephen Hawking's. Special is Bill Gates. We're not special. We are telling millions of youngsters, male and female, you're special. And when everything doesn't work out as them being best at everything, they look for excuses. And the best way of having an excuse is to be a victim. So you've got anxiety, you've got depression, you've got bipolar, you've got this. I'm not saying some people don't have these things. You've got ADHD, you've got autism. Funny, you've got to have a label. Otherwise, you're just thick.
It's funny you say that. I keep starting new books, but the latest one I've
is this one you're writing or reading?
Well, no, writing at the moment, and it's autobiographical and it's about some really really bad shit that happened to me, and there's going to be a point quite early on where I'm going to say, look, I could blame all this on the fact that I'm a depressive and I get terrible anxiety attacks, which undoubtedly contributed to the kind of the misery that I'm about to describe. But actually, I don't want this to be a book about why I'm a victim, why mental health. That nonsense.
This happened to me, and this is where I am.
This is where I am.
I don't have to be a victim.
Exactly. Yeah. And I was really disappointed when Prince Harry came out with the stuff
Really?
about.
Why?
Oh, for goodness sake! This thing about everyone suffered some.
Oh, I
kind
agree
of
with you on that.
Mental illness.
I thought it was wonderful. I'm all for anyone talking about. I mean, although people keep saying about, we're getting rid of the stigma of mental.
Oh yeah,
health
well,
problems.
5 pages on the Telegraph with.
I don't think we
what's
are.
her
I think
face?
people can go. It's wonderful. People speak out, but I know just from my own personal experience with people I know that they do face that stigma in daily life. And I've got to be honest with you. I'm not saying it's right, but I can sort of understand, certainly from an employer's perspective, that they don't want to have to deal with it. I mean, I'm sorry, I know we're not allowed to say things like that, but you can understand why. I'm not saying it's right. But in terms of the idea that we've all got mental health problems, yeah, I agree with you on that. No, we don't. And I don't think I ever will. And I've had a very good life. I've got a great life right now. I'm very happy. I love my job, got a husband, got a beautiful child. But I had 4 miscarriages. I had 3 rounds of IVF that didn't work. My marriage went to the absolute edge of the cliff. We looked over the precipice and we went through hell and back for a few years, emotional roller coaster. I don't feel I'm mentally unwell as a result. It means I think that actually I treasure what I have even
You
more.
are a
I think
Nietzschean superwoman.
weirdly, I think it's made me a happier person. I don't feel I've got any mental health scars in any way. I think so much about these things. And again, look, I've not gone through losing a parent at an early age like Prince Harry has, or things like that. So I can't compare and contrast. I'm simply saying, I agree with you. I think we don't all have mental health problems. I would say the vast majority of people on the planet don't have mental health problems because we don't have time.
Yeah, and but do you not surely also sympathise with the Queen and Prince Philip? I mean, I think the Queen has recently had a word and said, look, we are the firm. We don't do this kind of blubbering
Stiff upper
stuff.
lip. I don't have much sympathy for the Queen or Prince Philip, I've got to be honest. You know me.
Oh,
Well, this is one of the many things on which we disagree.
One of the few
I am
things
a Republican.
Stop trying to virtue signal by demonstrating that there are lots of things you disagree with me on, because it's not true. Royalty is probably one of the few.
I am genuinely appalled that in the 21st century in Britain that we think it's acceptable to have our head of state chosen from one white family. I think it's utterly bizarre. I find it utterly bizarre that clever people like you sign up to this madness.
I have 3 words that would effectively rebuff your republicanism. President Tony Blair.
I don't care.
You want President Tony Blair?
It could be President Jimmy Savile for all I care. I want them to be elected. I would sooner have a national lottery where we just pick some random my local bin man, because they would be it's a fairer way
you've got
of
to
doing
have
it.
stupid crap opinions somewhere just to kind of leaven your general wisdom.
Is this the chink in my armour?
No, it's
Come
not.
the revolution,
it's not.
James.
It's the
Come
thing.
the revolution.
It's the thing on the Persian rug. It's the fault. Because only Allah is perfect, and therefore you have to. Therefore you have to have your. I tried this once. I'm sure I've told this one before, but I was once at a drinks party with David Gilmour from Pink Floyd, and
I'll just pick that up for you.
And my wife had given me for my birthday Atom Heart Mother, and it's an album I particularly love. I mean, it's probably not their best album, but at the time in my head it was their best album. And I tried explaining this to David Gilmour, and he really wasn't having it. He basically, I think, thinks that Atom Heart Mother is a piece of shit. And when he sort of started effectively arguing, I said, "But don't you think it's like the Persian rug with the Fultons?" He said, "No." Anyway, I don't know how we got there. I just steered in that particular direction. You are listening to the Delingpole podcast with me, your friend, James Delingpole, and my special guest, Julia Hartley-Brewer, who is dressed in her one-piece, almost, jumpsuit. Well, there is no other kind of jumpsuit, is there, other than a one-piece jumpsuit?
I don't think I've ever owned one.
No, okay, no. It's actually a two, but it's sort of lycra trousers.
I'm wearing normal clothes, James.
She's wearing normal clothes, so don't even put away your dirty thoughts. Okay, more in a moment.
Breitbart News Daily with Alex Marlowe.
Paul in Connecticut, welcome to the show.
And I'm tired of banging my head against the wall, and every time you turn around, there's somebody else picking your pocket. It's insurance, it's taxes, it's regulations. I'm so sick of it. All they do is they hammer the people that want to get out there and do something every day, and they reward the people that stay home and do nothing. I'm beyond done with it. I've had it.
Breitbart News Daily, weekdays from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. East on Sirius XM Patriot 125.
This is Delingpole, a Breitbart.com podcast. Here once again is James Delingpole.
Welcome back to the final section of this show.
Thank God.
This special, incredibly good show. The Delingpole Show with me, James Delingpole, and my guest, my very special guest, Ms. Julia Hartley-Brewer. Julia, we were trying to decide what we're going to talk about in the final section of the show, and rather reluctantly, we agreed that we're going to talk about this sodding general election.
I know, it's still going on.
It's
a short election campaign. It doesn't feel like it, though.
The thing I hate about general elections is that you can't... Actually, you literally can't read the paper because it's all election shit.
Yeah.
And
you try doing a daily radio show.
Yeah.
When also under Ofcom rules, of course, unlike this podcast, I have to be strictly politically neutral. And I have no party political affiliation, but I'm not even allowed to express an opinion whether I think a policy is sensible.
Can you not just not talk about the election?
I don't think we could do that when basically the first 10 pages of every national newspaper is full of the election.
But real people aren't bothered by this. That woman in Bristol said so.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? We're all bored to death already with this strong and stable leadership nonsense. And yet, roughly June the 2nd, 90% of voters will go, what's this strong and stable thing about?
Yeah. Well, no, they're just going to go strong and stable, and they're gonna put the cross in the Conservative thing. And it's
I think the most depressing thing about elections now is the idea that they're won and lost on Facebook. It depresses me. Genuinely, if you get your news from Facebook, you're a fucking idiot.
Yeah. No, that's a whole other area. This obsession that the progressives have with fake news, and the idea that the people are so stupid that they are being brainwashed by made up stories designed to alter their vote. Because obviously everyone in America would have voted for Hillary Clinton if they hadn't read on the internet about
but
Obama's
the stories they
birth
believe in, the
certificate.
most shared stories, tend to be the ones that are untrue. I don't believe in this big media conspiracy. And again, it's like what's happening with Jeremy Corbyn. This idea that the mainstream media is so horribly opposed to him. I mean, broadcasters have to maintain. We're legally obliged to be neutral. And there are plenty of times I've gone on air and said, "Look, this sounds like a darn sensible policy to me." And then Jeremy Corbyn or John McDonnell or Diane Abbott will then go and say something stupid about Marxism or not knowing the costings of their own policy, and then that makes the news. And the reality is that they're their own worst enemies.
What's his sensible policy that you found?
I'm rather in favour of things like nationalising the railways when the contracts come through.
Why?
Because it seems it's a natural
because
monopoly.
You're an economic illiterate because you read PPE.
Oh God, I know nothing about economics because I read PPE.
Do you believe in the minimum wage as well? Do you believe in
absolutely believe in the minimum wage
and rent controls?
I do believe in rent controls.
What
Told you, there's plenty of things we don't agree with.
Julia, there's a book, obviously one of the many books you haven't read on your PPE course is Thomas Sowell's Basic Economics. And in the very first chapter, in about the first 10 pages, Thomas Sowell, who is not stupid, has seen both sides of the poverty line. He came up from the very ordinary family. And he explains in great detail why rent controls do not work and never can work.
Well, I'm more in favour in terms of long tenancies and more protection for tenants. I'm not, I don't see it in a big, nasty, horrible landlords trying to, do over poor people who are tenants. I don't see it like that at all. I just see it as people needing some protection. But I'm not obsessed, and I don't think everyone should be obsessed with this idea of home ownership and that it's for everyone and things like that.
Same thing with minimum wages. All you're doing is pricing out of the market ordinary people.
No, seriously, if you're running a business and you can't afford to pay, whether someone's answering the phone for you or cleaning your toilets, if you can't pay them a wage on which they work, say, a 40-hour week and can't pay their basic bills at a basic level, then you don't deserve to run a business because you don't know what you're doing.
So you don't really get.
No, because what I don't want is I don't want people messing about. I don't like the idea of Labour saying we're going to say that people can't earn over a certain amount. I couldn't care less what the chief executive of a FTSE 100 company pays himself or is paid by his shareholders. It's entirely between them and their customers, and if you don't like it, don't buy goods from them, don't invest in their pension fund. It's nothing to do with me. I care what public sector people earn, and I care what people at the very bottom earn, because they need protection.
I'm
not a free marketeer. I'm not a libertarian.
You are essentially arguing that you're not a classical liberal either. You are essentially arguing that people should be put out of a job because of your notion about how much
evidence that happens.
There's total evidence.
There absolutely isn't.
well, it's going to be
George Osborne himself, you remember, before he was Chancellor, was arguing about this.
And George Osborne is a fantastic model, isn't he? I mean, he was so right in his predictions about what would happen, the economic consequences of Brexit. Yeah, so I really trust George Osborne.
All these predictions that you're just going to completely destroy the labour market. Look, if you want to free up the labour market, what you want to do is go for, I know this sounds terrible, but you need to allow, again, not 0 hours contracts, but you need to allow more contract and actually, it's weirdly, living with someone who runs a small business himself is actually making it easier for people. It's terrible to say this, make it easier for people to lay people off. Because if you can
you
take...
shouldn't even feel embarrassed about that.
No, because I do that. It's awful. Because,
it's a very sound position.
But the reality is businesses will take on that extra person for the extra work they've got guaranteed for 6 months, but they can't guarantee it any further. And what they do is often they don't take the extra work on because they'll get stuck with an employee and they don't know if they can afford to pay them off. I mean, this is where France has gone so horribly wrong, of course, and Macron obviously is pledged to make these changes. He ain't going to do it. But this is the thing. I think an awful lot of people are like me. They're not libertarians and they're not sort of...
No.
Managed economy. They're somewhere in the middle.
More's the pity. The libertarian thing, I think libertarianism is actually quite a fringe, but I do think that more people ought to be classical liberals because it is the only sensible position.
Yeah, I'm a free marketeer in the sense, apart from, as we come back to, when there's a natural monopoly.
You must be quite a fan, by the sounds of it, of Theresa.
So far, I have to say, she doesn't. I mean, there are a few things. I'm trying to rack my brains right now that I've not been happy with. But generally, and again, I'm not. People think, oh, well, of course you're a Tory. I'm not. I'm not a Tory, but no. I would really struggle to say I'm a Tory. I would find that hard. I suppose maybe from my upbringing, but I find myself agreeing with an awful lot of things she says. I have to say.
Yeah, you see, I'm very disappointed with her.
She's virtually a socialist in your eyes.
Disappointed would presuppose that I had expectations which have been dashed. But I all along, in fact, I wrote a piece before she became the leader saying, my Cocker Spaniel would do a better job of Prime Minister than Theresa May. And if she's read that, she'll hate me forever because apparently she really bears grudges. But she's a red Tory, and I don't like red Tories. I think we've got...
Compassionate conservatism.
We've got not just a once in a generation, but once in several generations chance. I don't think even Margaret Thatcher really had this opportunity that Theresa May has had.
To do what?
To roll back the state, to get out of the way, to not have an industrial policy, to not pick winners, for example, to reduce the tax rate, to stop meddling in the economy and let the people get on with it, to take advantage of Brexit, to...
I agree with all that, absolutely. I mean, again, and all the evidence is, that capitalism and free markets will deliver and will deliver well. But I'm a welfare capitalist. I want the proceeds to be taken on a progressive taxation base to help the people who can't get on. And I do think one of the issues with a lot of people on the right is, and then one of the things that puts me off saying, I'm a conservative, because again, I've never been a member of any political party, and I don't think I ever will. I've been asked actually over the years, various different political parties have made informal approaches to me, 4 different political parties, excluding the Greens, have approached me, would I be interested in standing as a candidate? And I thought it was quite amusing that all 4 have thought this. And I've said no to all of them, obviously. But one of the things that I find is that I do think there's a thing with lots of people who have made it themselves, who haven't just been given privilege and have actually had to work their way through themselves and do it on their own. And I think Margaret Thatcher was classic of this, which is that view that, well, I did it. If everyone worked as hard as me, they'd all get ahead. And I know lots of people who have worked their bollocks off all their lives. They've worked a 40, even a 60-hour week, day in, day out. They don't take holidays, do everything. And you know what? They're still not off the ground. Because lucky us, we are privileged, because if you're bright and you know how the world works, you can get ahead. And I do think there needs to be a level of protection for people at the bottom end and more protection for people in the middle as well, who no matter how hard they work, don't get ahead.
No one's arguing against the good intentions. One's arguing against
whether it achieves anything.
The practical consequences of this magical fairy policy that you are kind of supporting. And I think part of the problem, with respect, I mean, I think my special right-wing friend who's listening to this show, who's a pure classical liberal, was thinking, she's not totally off my political shag list, but
she's fading fast.
But no, I think even you, and you might balk at this, even you are slightly guilty of that virtue signalling to which all people on the right, to a greater or lesser degree, are prone. And I think if enough people were out there saying, look, I'm a conservative, or whatever you want to call yourself. I'm a classical liberal, not because I don't care about the ordinary people, not because I don't want a safety net for the people who've been unlucky, but I believe that of all the systems, this is the one that is the least unfair and that creates the greatest amount of so-called social justice. And I think if people are more upfront about that, and said things like, and that's why I don't believe in the minimum wage, and that's why I do.
No, but that's my point. I don't think these things are mutually exclusive. I think you
they don't work. The things you're proposing.
Well,
that's the thing.
Clearly they do.
They don't.
Clearly they do. There are plenty of countries with the minimum wage where it does work.
Because they work for whom? They work
for the people on minimum wage, mostly.
Yes, but they don't. But they discriminate against all the people who are driven out of the jobs market, who are rendered unemployed.
Here's the thing. You're telling me there are all these businesses that are going, oh, shall we hire someone? But that extra 50p an hour, we're not going to hire someone.
Yes,
you know what? They're not hiring those people anyway, because if you don't need someone, do you know what businesses don't do? They don't hire people. And if they need someone, they hire people because they've got no choice, because they need that person.
You were halfway there when you said it should be easier to sack people. But actually, if you look at things from an employer's perspective, employers need to pay what the market demands and no more. That's how it goes. Otherwise, you're going to get
but here's the thing: when people aren't paid minimum wage, we're in this ridiculous situation where we are subsidising low pay by often rather successful, profitable employers with a housing benefit, with tax credits. It is an absolute nonsense that people who are in work should be receiving any benefits from the state to fund their living costs. We're subsidising that.
We're in agreement on that.
Every penny that we require the businesses to pay on top in terms of a minimum wage. I'm not talking about paying people 40 quid an hour. I'm talking about people being able to just pay their electricity bill and their rent that week. For goodness sake.
These layers of special benefits and stuff were, I think, introduced by, first of all, Gordon Brown as a trap.
Well, he put everyone on the payroll. Everyone on tax credits is on the payroll.
Exactly.
Basically.
So everyone is a client of the government.
Yeah.
Which is, and Osborne was very much of the Brownian mentality. I mean, I just find it astonishing that he could ever be considered what is a Tory anyway? That's the other thing. I'm going to do a podcast with Amol Rajan, and he said, I want to talk to you about what a real conservative is and what the definition thereof is. And I'm thinking, fuck off. I don't want to talk about stuff like that. I don't care about Burkean conservatism. I'm just interested in what ideas work and what ideas
this is my thing. Is my sort of political journey. Is actually, I was one of those people who genuinely in 1997 on May the 2nd, which was also my birthday. Had a little bit like, what did you get for your birthday? I got a Labour government. My very first time I ever voted in 1987, I was living in Finchley. I voted against Margaret Thatcher. I was brought up hating her, and it's one of those things in my political journey about how Tony Blair didn't deliver, and lots of the things that I thought would work didn't work. And it turns out giving people who are in poverty a load more money doesn't actually help their families, weirdly. And I accept that. It's about, and that's why I do believe, work is the route out of poverty. Again, you sound like, Theresa May or David Cameron then. But going down that route, but at the same time, I believe just passionately as a daughter of an NHS GP in the NHS, but I also believe passionately in, for instance, in grammar schools to help, poor kids, bright kids from poor or middle class homes. I don't care. I don't think an entire education policy should be based around the needs of children on free school meals, personally. But there are lots of things. But that's to say, my politics is a mishmash, and that's where I think an awful lot of voters are. I think that's why we've seen this breakdown of Labour v Tory v Liberal v UKIP v whatever. And I think there's been this breakdown where there are lots of people like me who say, well, yeah, I believe in the free market, but I also don't think that trains make sense as a privatised business. Or I believe in the NHS, but yeah, I believe in selection in schools. And people treat us as if we're anomalies. I don't think we are anymore.
It's funny. One of the areas where I have changed, I used to think, not altogether seriously, but half seriously and rather snobbishly, that democracy is not a good thing because
like Romaniacs,
because everyone gets an equal vote, whether you're super bright or whether you're from a council estate or whatever.
Because there are no super bright people on council estates, James, obviously.
No. But what I'm coming around to saying is that actually I've seen my Oxbridge generation, and I'm disgusted by them. I'm absolutely what I've realised is one area where the Marxists are right is that the the establishment does look after its own. It really does. The establishment, by the way, is not I think, the caricature thing that Karl Marx believed in. I think the problem now is the liberal elite, and actually they're more Blairite than they are Thatcherite. But one of the things I've observed in my increasingly long life is that people do pull up the drawbridge. They don't want other people.
If I
having
interview
a chance.
one more MP, usually Labour, but often Tory as well, who came from an ordinary family and went to grammar school. Interviewed one today, Paul Flynn, lovely MP, a Welsh Labour MP of many years standing, who went to a grammar school but is opposed to grammar schools. And I said, do you think you'd have had the life you've had? Would you have been an MP if you'd not gone to grammar school? He said, no, probably not. It's like, well, there we are then. But the idea is, well, because everyone can't have it. But of course, it's this weird idea. By its very nature, everyone can't go to grammar school. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a grammar school. And the idea that that's in some way unfair. I find that utterly, utterly bizarre. You know, people are going to earn different salaries. You know, I'm in favour of the minimum wage to look after people at the bottom. I couldn't care less if someone earns £1 billion, £1 million, £100,000. Good on you if you can get away with it. Fair play to you. I wish I'd married you. But the reality is, when it comes to sort of inequality, there's nothing. People don't want equality. People want fairness, and there's nothing unfair about hardworking people or clever people doing better in life. There's nothing intrinsically unfair about that.
I think where I would disagree with you on the top end of wages is that if I'm paying through my taxes, I think I should bloody well have some say in how much, for example,
public sector pay, yes.
NHS area administrators, for example, I don't think they should be on $450,000 a year.
It's absolutely absurd.
It's obscene.
But also this absurd idea that you hear all the time in the public sector. Look, listen, these people could go out and get a job in the private sector tomorrow for far more. Well, go on then. Yeah. Tell you what, we'll give you a month. Yes. You come back with a pay offer. You come back with a pay offer more than you're earning right now. We'll match it. Yes. And if you don't, we're halving your pay. You live on your wits, because the private sector doesn't pay these silly sums unless you deliver. And most people in the public sector, I'm quite happy for doctors who've been in a decade of training and have got grade A's throughout their life and top first from top universities, working their heads off. I'm very happy. I'm intensely relaxed about our top consultants and surgeons earning big money. But the idea that the administrators who can't even manage to put enough nurses on the rota, the idea that these people are worth any six-figure salary of any, is absurd.
I think, you know what?
I think they should be embarrassed.
You are just back at the top of the political shag list.
But this is the thing. This is the notion of what works, but also what's fair.
Yes, of course. No, I totally agree.
People don't resent people who are brilliant doing well and being paid well.
You say that. I get loads of resentment. Loads of resentment.
No, you don't.
I do. People,
you don't get paid well.
People think that bit's certainly true, but I do. People, I think, just resent my brilliance.
But I get people. The other weekend, I was tweeting out, "Oh well, here's my view where I am on." I was in. Actually, you've been to Positano, I remember, because you were tweeting about it, and we'd been in Sorrento.
I went because I had to.
Okay, well, I went because I had a choice, and we couldn't get through. We couldn't get to this beautiful, beautiful little town, and we ended up having a beautiful lunch overlooking Positano, beautiful view. And I tweeted out.
You tweeted it. I saw it.
It's absolutely lovely, and a number of people go, "Oh, wonderful, where is it?" But you still get the tweets back from people saying, "Oh, well, all right for you. I can't afford that on my, my benefits or my." And I always want to say, sod off. There's not a penny I'm spending that I haven't worked hard for. Yeah. I don't resent anyone who's on a yacht there. It's this bizarre idea that you have to pretend you're not doing well. I'm having a great life. I'm not apologising to anyone for it.
Yeah, exactly. I've so enjoyed this chat, and I hope that
someone has.
I really have. And so did my special friend at home, or in his car, or in her car, or doing
bedroom.
As she does the ironing, whatever. I think probably lots of women do the ironing to the show and really enjoy it.
Do you know, I've not ironed anything in about 20 years. My daughter actually saw the iron in the cupboard under the stairs, and she said, "Our cleaner is called a Katerina."
Well,
and she said, "Oh, it's a Katerina's iron." I can do it. I'm a very good ironer. I just choose not to do it.
Yeah, I can't do it, and I think it's wrong. I just think it's immoral.
What, for men to iron?
Well, I just think I'm taking away work that could make a woman.
I bet you don't pay your cleaner minimum wage.
Very happy. Thank you, Julia, for being a lovely, lovely guest. Listen to. Delingpole, the podcast with me, James Delingpole, brought to you by Breitbart. Thank you very much. Goodbye.